This is going to the review for the characteristics of polynomial functions. To start with, let's talk about the odd, even, or neither. And so when it's odd, so when you have an odd function, from the equation, all exponents must be even, or must be odd, and no constant, meaning no number without a variable. If it's even, all exponents must be even, and it can have a constant. And neither is just some combination thereof. It's combination. Just some combination of those. From a graph, this is going to spin about the origin. This is going to reflect over the y-axis. And so if it doesn't reflect over the y-axis, it's not even. If it doesn't spin about the origin, it's not odd. And so let's look at this one. So my exponents are all odd, so it's odd. And so let's look at the graph. What would that look like? Well, here's the origin. If you take this section and spun it around the origin, you would end up here. So my exponent's even, and I have a constant. So therefore, it's even. And if I look at my graph, I could reflect it across the line y equals, or x equals 0. So this line right here I could reflect across. So let's look at these. On this one, if I take the origin and I try to spin this over here, it doesn't work, so it's neither. If I take and look at the y-axis, this doesn't reflect over here, so it's neither. This one, take the origin. I can spin it around to get to there. So it's odd. On the test, you'll have to either tell it from a graph or from an equation, odd, even, or neither. So in this next bit, we're going over the transformations. And so remembering how that works, if we have like f of x is equal to x cubed, g of x, if I have anything out here, this multiply the y. Anything in here, and it's just going to be this, whatever that variable is. It just tells you this function is what you're working with. And so like I say, x plus C, that means I move left C. Anything added out here moves up or down D. And if I have a multiplier inside that divides my x. And so this is going to affect, inside is affecting the x, outside y. And so if I want to rewrite this function, let's go ahead and do the transformations. If I said down, that's going to be outside. And it behaves same when it's outside. And so that means that my function, I want to go outside of it. I want to go down 3, subtract 3. Vertically stretched, that's a y change. So therefore outside, and it will behave same. So that means outside the function, that means outside of the parenthesis. F of x, excuse me, g of x is equal to 2. Because it needs to be outside, I don't have to worry about parentheses. Shifted left, that's an x change. So inside, and that means it needs to be inside parentheses, and it's going to behave opposite. So g of x is equal to, we have to have it inside the parentheses, so x left is going to become plus 5 cubed. Okay, so reflections, when I reflect over the x, that would be a y change. So outside, and any reflection is always going to be a negative. And so that needs to be a negative on the outside. So g of x is equal to negative x cubed. So now we're going to take these functions and we're going to look at them. First off, you need to take and find that curve point, and that's what you're going to be looking at matching to. And I see this as a reflection across the y, and some of you may have seen it as a reflection across the x, and that's okay. The negative will be just in a different spot. So that's going to be a negative on the inside. We went up 2 units, so that's an outside. That's, oops. And so that means we have our new function is g of x is equal to the negative is on the outside, x cubed, and then plus 2. So again, we look for that spin point. There it is. Again, it reflected over the x-axis. And again, if you did it over the other one, it's not going to really change on these. And so that's going to be an outside. And then I went 1 unit to the right, so that means that on the inside, I moved one right, or one left. And so f of x is going to equal the negative on the outside, x plus 1 cubed. So again, find your spin point. This one's a little bit trickier because we moved both over and up. Oops, up to 3 to get to this point. Now looking at going to the next step, it is still that 1, so there is no vertical stretch. And so I went right 1, up 3. And so that gives me my f of x. This is inside, so it's opposite, outside, same. So for the next several, we're kind of going back to that same format. And just remember that anything that happens outside of the parenthesis changes the y, and it behaves the same. Anything that happens inside the parenthesis changes the x, and it behaves opposite. And so when we're looking here at 13, then we look and see, and that 4 is outside, and so that means it's going to change the y. So that means that I need to write down my x's just like what they already are. And on my y, I am doing the same because it's outside, and so I'm going to add 4 to each of my y's. So 0 plus 4 is 4. 1 plus 4, 5. 8 plus 4, 12. Here, we are inside, so that means I need to behave opposite, and that affects the x. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to take my x and I'm going to divide it by 2. And so 0 divided by 2 is 0. 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now there's nothing that's on the outside. So y is left alone. This time I have something on the outside and something on the inside. And so my inside changes my x and it behaves opposite. So therefore, I'm going to subtract 3 from my x. So 0 minus 3 is negative 3. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Those are my 3 x's. And then so here we're on the outside, so that's going to change my y's, and it behaves the same. So I am multiplying by 2. So 2 times my y, which would be 2 times 0, which is 0, 2 times 1, which is 2, and 2 times 8, which is 16. On this next one, we actually have things on both the inside and outside. So outside changes y, inside changes x, and it behaves the opposite. So that means I'm going to add 4. So my x plus 4, so 0 plus 4 is 4. 1 plus 4 is 5. 2 plus 4 is 6. And so outside behaves same. So we're going to do subtract 1 from your y. So 0 minus 1 is equal to negative 1. 1 minus 1 is equal to 0. And 8 minus 1 is equal to 7. So those are my new y's. Here are x's multiplied by negative 1. So that means I need to divide by negative 1. And so x divided by negative 1. So 0 divided by negative 1 is going to give me 0. 1 divided by negative 1 gives me negative 1. 2 divided by negative 1 gives me negative 2. So those are my new x's. So now let's find y's. Well, y has two different things. We have our multiply and we have our add. Let's make that a little bit darker for you. So I'm going to multiply by 3 and add 4. And so these are both with this, do the same operations because they're outside and they change the y. And so 3y plus 4 is my format. So 3 times 0 plus 4 is 4. 3 times 1 plus 4 is 7. 3 times 8 plus 4 gives me 28. Those are my 3 ordered pairs. So now when we're writing the polynomial that best fits this data, remember that a can change as long as I don't have any more information. I don't have any way of knowing what my a would be. So if you had another multiplier in front, that's fine. And so let's go ahead and set each of these up. We're going to set them equal to x. It says that's what x is equal to. And so when I move these around, that's going to become x plus 6i is equal to 0. X minus 6i equals 0. But over here, I have two different things I need to move. So I need to move the 1/4 over. And so that means I need to multiply by 4. So 4x is equal to 1. And then I need to do the 1 over. So that means I'm subtracting 1. And so 4x minus 1 is equal to 0. So we cannot have the i's involved. So we need to take and multiply it out to get those i's taken care of. So when we multiply, we get x squared. We get negative 6ix. And then positive 6ix. And negative 36i squared. And so I squared becomes a negative 1. So negative 36 times negative 1 becomes a positive 36. And so if I was to write out my function, it would be x squared. These two would cancel, plus 36 times 4x minus 1. And that's your answer. So let's do the same thing on 19. Start off the same way. X is equal to 3/4. X is equal to -6. X is equal to square root of 7. So first step is to get that 4 moved over by multiplying by 4. So we get 4x is equal to 3. Then we move the 3 over by subtracting 3. 4x minus 3 is equal to 0. And then we take and move the -6 over, so x plus 6 is equal to 0. Now to get rid of this one, we can't have the square root over on the other side, so I need to square both sides. And so that gives me x squared, excuse me, I jump a step there, is equal to 7. And I move the 7 over, so x squared minus 7 is equal to 0. So I set up my order pair, set up my equation, and it's 4x minus 3, x plus 6, and x squared minus 7. So we're going to do the same thing here. Only thing that's different is we actually are given a y-intercept. We aren't given if a is positive or negative. And so either way would be an acceptable answer. So you're going to take each of these numbers, and don't have to worry about the sign, so 2 times 1 times 3. And we want to try to get to where it's at 30. So what do I need to multiply it by to get to 30? And so 6 times a equals 30, so a has to equal 5. So that tells us our front number is 5. You could have also done this as -5. We don't have enough information to decide which one it is. And this creates a factor of x minus 2. This one creates a factor of x plus 1. And this one creates a factor of x minus 3. Either one of those is acceptable. So I went the wrong way. This time, though, we are given our a needs to be positive because of that. And so let's go ahead and find our a. 5 times 3 times 2 times a equals 30. So 15 times 2 is 30. A equals 30. So A is equal to 1. And since it needs to be positive, then it's a positive 1. And so I'm going to put that in front. This is going to create the factor of x plus 5. Here we have the factor of x plus 3. And here we have the factor of x minus 2. So I have 1 times x plus 5, x plus 3, and x minus 2. You don't have to write that 1. And so that's my answer. So when we're looking at this next question, we can see that our a is negative because the right-hand side is going down. And so we're now going to take and try to figure out what value we need to have for a. So we're going to take our numbers, 4, 2, 1. Multiply those together, times something is going to equal our 24. And so that's going to be 8 times a is equal to 24. So a is equal to 3. We know a has to be negative because it's going down on the right-hand side. And so that means our multiplier is -3. And then we have this factor created by x plus 4. Then we change the sign here, and it's going to be x plus 2. And this one is going to be x minus 1. And that's your answer. So now we're going to look at the profitability of this tutoring business. It asks how many weeks before the group started earning a profit. So we need to look and see when did the line cross to the positive. It was right here. Let me change colors to red so you can see that. So that's when it became positive, because here you have positive profit. And so that point is 5, 0. And that was after 5 weeks. And to find our rate of change, we need to do our slope formula. And that we'll plug in our numbers from here. So we have 70.351 minus a negative 15.215 and 12.378 minus a negative 2.289. And divide those, and don't forget that if you use the control and the division bar, that it can create that division bar without you having to work extra. And so when you divide those, you end up with a positive 5.83. For this next one, we're looking at the lawn care business. And when did he start his business, how much did he have to initially invest? Well, that would be at the beginning, aka the y-intercept. So our y-intercept was at -50, so he had to start with $50 invested, and that makes, we got that from the order pair at 0, -50. And then our rate of change, we're going to use the same formula as last time. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. And so Y2 would be -18 and 517 thousandths minus 337 and 35 thousandths. All divided by 7 and 737 thousandths minus 2 and 930 thousandths. And when you divide this, since the line's going down, we know it's going to have a negative slope. It's going to be a negative 11.56. So this next one is looking at how many tricks the dog can perform based upon how many hours it's trained. And so we need to look at when will it learn 8 tricks. Well, 8 tricks is here, so it'd be at 1 hour, and that came from the order pair 1/8. So the next things, we're going to be looking at sketching those graphs, and you'll have a couple of these on the test. So make sure you remember how things look. So degree of 3 means that it could be one of these, especially if it has more than one x-intercept. That's the options we have. So this one says we have two x-intercepts. It tells me my y-intercept is at 2, and I have a positive a value. So that means that this side needs to be up, so that one's out of play. So I know I need to end up. I have two x-intercepts. I'll put those two here. And I came up to it, came through, and then came on through. It's one of the ways you could have graphed it. You could have graphed it a lot of different ways. But the big thing is, one of them is just going to have a touch and come back point for one of the x-intercepts, and the other one is going to go through. So cubic polynomials, again, that same idea. They can go up or down. If it has a negative a value, that means that we're going to go down. Sorry, I thought for a minute I did the other one. And it says I'm only going through quadrants 1, 2, and 4. So remember that this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. That means I'm not using this quadrant. That means I can't have any x-intercepts on this side. So the first x-intercept I have is at the origin. Y'all could have put it anywhere as long as it's in the positive x. And I'm going to come through, touch and go through, touch and go through. And there's my graph. Because I needed 3 roots, so I have to touch it 3 times. The next one is a degree of 2. That means it's either opening up or it's opening down, because it's going to be a quadratic. And it says it's a relative min, so that means the lowest point of the graph is going to be at -5. So here's -5. I choose a point that's on that same line. And there it is. And the last one says I have a degree of 3, but it says it only has one x-intercept. So that means it's going to be one of those that looks like that is going to be the x cubed graph. So it can go this way or that way. It says it's always decreasing. So that means that it cannot go up, and it only passes through 3 quadrants. So you choose, you can either not go through quadrant 1 or you can't go through quadrant 3. It's your choice. I'm going to choose to avoid this one. So there's a way to avoid.